Welcome to Heal Black Joy podcast. Hi, I'm Lola Troy, the host and curator of Heal Black Joy, the learning platform for our community to heal our Black joy with tangible and attainable programs for the mind, body, soul, relationships, and businesses. And in today's conversation, we are talking about healing Black joy through love without limits. And today, my guest is Jhavia Nicole. She is a counselor and an educator with nearly a decade of experience in the human services field. She provides wellness coaching and consulting, counseling, case management, advocacy, crisis intervention, wellness education, and resource coordination to marginalized and underserved populations from a trauma-informed, culturally responsive perspective. Jhavia works with clients, individuals, partners, organizations, and businesses to outline and achieve their goals by developing personalized wellness plans. So I'm going to get Miss Jhavia on. I sent her an invite. Hopefully she can get in.
See
Hi,
it.
my dear.
Hello,
How are
hello. I'm trying to make
you?
sure you can see me.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
How are you, my
Check it
dear?
out. Fine. How are you?
I am good, man. I'm good. Loving the weather. You know, it's almost springtime on the East Coast. You guys
Mm,
probably get it all the time, but we're
it's been
having
cold. It's been cold.
really so it's flipped. So on the East Coast right now, it's like 70 some degrees
It was
in
like
February.
yesterday and today, the 50s.
That's really different. That's
Yeah.
really
I'm
different.
like, I didn't come to Southern California for this.
Right, right.
But last week it was warm. But yeah, no, this week it's been cold and windy.
Yeah. That's crazy. So otherwise, how have you been managing your spirit? How have you been managing your mind? How's your mental wellness? I know in today's age with everything going on, you know, we might be on the onset of a war. You know, we've got a lot of Black folks that have been committing suicide. It's a lot going on right now in the world. So I always want to start with, how are you feeling mentally? How are you?
There's always definitely a lot of things kind of swirling around us, going on all the time. Um, I'm grateful to have like the support system I have and to have the therapeutic support I have, to, be in regular, consistent therapy.
Right.
Because I don't know. It might be looking a little different if that was not the case. But also, in some regards, I've been a little bit in a bubble, more so than I used to be.
Yeah.
Just because I'm a foster parent, and so since I've been parenting, I'm still fairly new, but I started fostering last year, and we just got a new placement. So now we went from one to two. So I've been in that bubble, honestly. So it's kind of created this buffer from some of the other stuff that's going on. Like
Yeah.
I'm aware of it, but I'm not as immersed in it as I would typically be, because I got to focus on the children.
On the
So,
children. Yes. Yes.
mhm,
Well, that gives me something to discuss too. We had the pleasure, the reason why we connected, we had the pleasure of being on Sisters Healing Network with our good sister Naya Binga. Shout out to Sisters Healing Network,
mhm,
an awesome platform that discusses topics such as what we discuss here at Heal Black Joy, where it's
mhm,
all about joy, happiness, wellness, everything that brings us joy, right? And
mhm,
so this month we have talked about love. I wanted February to be not only about Black history, but about Black love and how we
mhm,
celebrate it, and how we just how we move through our life with our Black love, the examples of Black love. But you know, I always
mhm,
like to push the envelope. So we talked about relationship love between a husband and a wife. I talked to a relationship and dating coach, and I talked to a sister friend of mine who talked about self-love, self-love.
Okay.
And when I thought about having this conversation with you, I wanted us to, because the LGBTQ conversation has been so, I'm an ally. I am a friend of the LGBTQ community. And I think what's going on in America, specifically what's going on in America when it comes to trans kids, when it comes to same-sex relationships, when it comes to, just the rights of the LGBTQ community, I don't think we have enough conversations about it. And I wanted to push the envelope and introduce to our community, as well as just have that conversation, have the conversation about love from a different perspective. And I thought that you would be the perfect person to have that conversation with, because of your lifestyle and how you express your love. So first off, tell me the story of Jhavia. Tell me your story, and then tell me your love story without limits.
Okay. Well, it's kind of broad. We all have, I say we all have a context, and we all have kind of like, chapters of a story. We all have a lot of stuff going on. But as it pertains to love in particular, so I am originally from Atlanta. So I grew up like in the South. Me and my sister, I grew up with my mom, and my mom was a single parent, but my grandmother was like my other parent. So I kind of sometimes hesitate to say that she was a single parent she was in the traditional sense, but we did have another, like loving presence of an adult in our life. So my introduction to love and that kind of stuff, and what it looked like, was the family dynamics. So the ways that my grandmother would show us care, the ways that my mom would show us care. One of the things that I remember growing up, and Valentine's Day just passed, and I recently brought this up, and I probably bring it up every year. My wife probably like, girl, I know. But that memory always comes back of, for Valentine's Day, my mom will always get us Valentines. She'll give us little gifts. So she would put maybe a little bag on our door. So when we got up in the morning and come out the bedroom, we would see little stuff, maybe balloons, maybe candy, little stuffed animal. But she always got me and my sister Valentines. And so I was introduced to this concept of actively loving someone and showing someone that love, and it not just being oh, well, I'm your mom, and so I love you type of thing.
Right.
She showed it. So in doing things like that, or in just taking a lot of interest in the things we were interested in, while juggling multiple jobs and while dealing with her own stuff, but still showing us that love in those ways, in very deliberate, active ways, writing us little notes. I still have a note my mom wrote me where she was like, my beautiful Black child, because I'm the darkest. My mom's dark skinned too, but I'm darker. I'm darker than her and my sister. So she's like, I always call you my little pretty Black child. So she wrote me a little note. So stuff like that, getting those little examples. So my story is very much rooted in love and seeing it manifest in different ways. So that was how I was able to see it throughout my childhood, and also seeing the love my folks had for community. My mom and my grandma would take folks in. They were the people who, everybody came to our house. My friends came to my house. I didn't really go to my friend's house like that. My house was the congregation spot.
Right.
My grandma was everybody grandma. Everybody called her grandma. Everybody called my mom. Unless they had a crush on her or something. That's a whole other situation. Okay. But my home was that spot, and my mom and my grandmother were known for taking in folks who were struggling. My mom took in this young girl, she was a teenager who had been abused, and whose her mom sided with the abuser over her. It was her man, her husband, whatever, sided with him over her. My mom did not know this girl. She heard her story from a friend. My mom was like, tell her to come on.
Wow.
Like she can come here. And so I remember like my sister and I like shifting to sharing a room and so that she could have the other room and not even feeling a way about it because I'm like, this is what we do. We have that community love as well as that family love. And so stuff like that, I'll never forget because I'm like, I'll never forget that my mom heard this girl's story, didn't know her and was like, take me to her. We going to get her stuff. Like she gotta, she needs to be somewhere safe. So I was shown those examples of love, growing up,
Can I just
that
say
the
this?
family love and the community love.
Can I just say this? I love this story so much because one thing about it, let's just give kudos to mom. Let's give kudos to mom because your mom showed you early examples of loving you from your being and not from your doing.
Right.
And that's something that has been resonating with me this month about trying to love people in who they are and not what they can accomplish or who
Right.
I need them to be or do something for me, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that
Right.
is so important when you're displaying love, especially to children,
Mm-hmm.
loving them from a place of being and not doing, because I think as we become adults, and especially in our community, a lot of times that our children have received love or our generation received love was based in our performance. It was
Mm-hmm.
based in
Absolutely.
what we did, not who we are as people, as human
We feel like
beings.
we have to earn it. We feel like we have to earn
Right.
it. You don't have to earn love. You're worthy
Mm,
of love by the air because you exist and you breathe air and you are created in this beautiful, wonderful image. You are just like worthy of love because you are. So I won't get preachy, but yeah, like we're just deserving of love. So you don't have to earn it. And what I appreciated too is that my mom, definitely like loved us for us, and embraced certain things that other people saw as negative. So like for instance, I was always very into creative things and sometimes extended family members would be like, that girl always off somewhere doing this and doing that and you just let her do. They always said like she just let me run the streets, she just let me do whatever. No, she let me have experiences. So when I was
mm,
out like in an organization like trying something new, they considered that running the streets, like because it was outside of the box, because it wasn't what they were accustomed to. Like, oh, she's going to do what? Horseback riding? What? You know what I'm saying? Just like, oh, that's dangerous.
right.
My mom's just like, I want them to have experiences. Or my sister, she will always have like little comebacks for my mom. And especially in the Black community, folks would be like, oh, hell no, shut down. My mom was like, you're going to get in debate. My sister was like, what? Did not want to do it. My mom was like, yeah, you're going to do debate. And my sister ended up being Miss Debate. Okay. Like for homecoming or whatever, she was Miss Debate. Like she just has that great skill. But my mom was like, this is a skill you have. Instead of me, shutting it down and being like, you just need to be quiet or whatever. She was like, let's put that to a more productive use. Let's do something constructive with
Right.
that skill you have.
Right.
Um, or if she
Woo.
knew that like I could be, I got bored easily. I finished stuff quickly. Like at school, I would just like, I would go do my work and dip. Like I would be gone. So my
Yeah.
mom would be like, okay, let's get you in activities. Let's, have a bunch of books, whatever. So she really focused on who we were and not like just our actions. And
Yeah.
I think we just been shown so much like, oh, you have to earn love. You have to earn. No, you're worthy of that. You don't got to earn. You don't have to earn that. Like, no, like where does it, the I don't know. I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that. But and I'm grateful that I was shown that was not the case. Like at my lowest, I've been loved. At my greatest accomplishment, whatever, I've been loved regardless. And
Yeah.
it's most important in those moments where you feel like you're not your best self. um, some love has sustained me in those moments where I was absolutely not my best self, when I was at my rock bottom.
I got a question from one of our Heal Black Joy members. Shout out to Perry Simone. She says, I hear you talking about your mother's impact on love. How do you feel make father figures impact the female view on love?
So I think, especially because think about our society, the whole thought process typically is that like your father is like your first example. So especially for a girl, like for a girl child, your father is your first example of like how you should be treated and like really like of the action behind love. Like it's like your mom is supposed to love you and take care of you or whatever, but like your father is supposed to show you more of the action, do the things or whatever. And that's supposed to be your first example. I think that there is some. I think both parents can do that, and I'm grateful that even though my father was not active in my life, I did have male figures in my life who showed up and who showed me, like they didn't just talk, but they did things. I had my uncle, so my grandmother's brother. I used to call him my Superman. He nurtured like my interests. I was a little tomboy. He was a mechanic and stuff. He could fix stuff. And I used to like to figure stuff out, like, oh, I want to figure out this electrical, whatever. I want to figure out these wires. And he and a lot of my family members were like, that's not, that girl need to get up off that ground. Like, she don't need to be doing that. And this is like my Southern country, like family. They're just like, that's not lady. Like, he's like, leave that girl alone. She like to do this. I'm gonna let her do it. And so I'll be out there with him at his truck and he'll be showing me stuff. And he's like, this is what you like. Don't let nobody. And this is like, pretty progressive for a Black Southern male, especially one who was, he only had like an elementary school education, but was just witty and brilliant, like one of the funniest people I have ever known, and just very nurturing. And he always stuck up for me when they would talk stuff, and so he showed me that, that love that showed up for me, that was active, that was like, actually saying something, not just kind of like waiting until they went away and then be like, oh, it's okay. No, he'll be like, leave that girl alone. If she want to, do this, she want to try to fix this TV, let her do, type of thing. So I think that that's important. I think it's important for us to be shown that from male figures and female figures, to be shown not just like, oh, I love you, because that's very pervasive, but to be shown like the action behind it. And I think that for like women and for like female kids that getting that from their father or from a male figure, it doesn't necessarily have to be the father, but just from a male figure, so they can have that balance, so they can see that like this is possible. Like you don't have to accept less. You don't have to. You don't have to perform for it either. Like you don't have to. Oh, I gotta cook, clean, whatever to be loved. No, baby girl, you ain't got to do that. Like you are worthy of love from him, love from her, love from them, love from whoever, by virtue of who you are. So I think that it's good to have that balance. And if it can't come from like the actual father or whatever, just there being some kind of positive figure. I mean, I'm grateful. I had my uncle and I had my stepfather, like who my mom eventually got with, they're not even together anymore, but he's still in our lives and as a family friend, and is very like, very nurturing and very like, so I'm grateful that I got to still see those examples. And even now in my adulthood, my father-in-law, like talk about show up, he shows up. My wife's grandfather. So I have had examples, even though sometimes people don't necessarily think so because my father wasn't around, but I'm like, I'm grateful and blessed that I've had several examples and it didn't have to come from him.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, I mean, the topic is about love without limits. I mean, you've already given us tangible examples of your mother showing you love without limits, recognizing those things that are inside of you and your sister and saying, hey, let's explore this thing, because she knew that you weren't going to be able to just sit still. She knew that you wanted to see and do and experience and have those experiences. And then for your Southern uncle, who was older, like he's around your grandmother's age, to also love you without limits. Because when you think about the Bible Belt South, a woman and a child should stay in a woman's place and in a child's place.
Absolutely.
Like we're talking about society norms. That was very unconventional for your uncle to show you, things around a car at such a very, very young
age. And for that to just be who he was. Like, he didn't have like some liberal education, none of that academic. Yeah. This man did not make it past elementary school. So this is just who he was. Like, he just like, this is who you are. You're great. He would affirm me. He didn't know the word affirm, but he knew how to tell me,
But he knew
you're really
how
good at
to.
this.
Yeah.
You're really good
Yeah.
at this. Like, dang, girl, you did that fast. Like, don't let them tell you that you can't do it. Leave her alone. Let her do. She really good at this.
Wow.
Like,
So how do you feel the influence, the love that you receive as a child influences the romantic love that we desire or seek as an adult? Because you have very, very strong examples of love without limits as a child. How did that shape you or mold you when you were dating or deciding like, hey, I've seen this as a child. So most times, a lot of times kids have not seen it. And so they're
hmm
in
hmm
search of that as they grow up.
correct.
So the fact that you saw it as a child and it was very strong in your support system, whether it was your mom, your grandmother, your uncle,
hmm
how did that shape and mold you when you were trying to start dating or when you met your wife?
So our childhood like informs so much.
Doesn't it?
um,
Doesn't it?
it is crazy to me. And as someone who is like, a counselor and very much into like psychology and stuff, it blows my mind. I mean, so for me, it was like I had examples of, healthy love and of being affirmed and stuff. But I also was the oldest and had been through some traumatic things. So I had the tendency to take on a caregiver role. I was like a little
Mm,
woman. I was like, I grew up quick. Well, and it wasn't because I wasn't forced to by like my mom. I was forced to by trauma, honestly, like
yeah.
going through
Yeah.
trauma, going through assault and stuff. And that, it took some of my like joy at that time. So I kind of stopped being childlike in some ways and just kind of withdrew and stuff like that. And also became really was kind of caregiver ish and was known as the person, like even as a child, like people would come to me with stuff and I, would take care of them, make sure they're good. So that translated, I feel like because in my childhood I did have that love and I did have my cup be filled. I was
Mm-hmm.
pouring, 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 pouring. Like I'm just like, up here trying to feed the masses. And so in relationships, that looked like me pouring into this person, not getting that reciprocity. And because of understanding trauma, trying to be understanding and like, and was very empathetic. So like also giving them um, giving them more grace than I should have because I'm
Mm,
like, I'm making excuses. I was making excuses for them, like, oh, well, maybe he is going through this or maybe she, whatever. No. And I'm just pouring. I'm continuing to pour and not getting poured back into. So I think that, like, also sometimes you attract certain types of people to you.
yeah,
Some
you
folks
do.
are emotional leeches
Yeah.
because everybody's trying to get their needs met. And so some people are like, oh, I see your cup is full and I'm thirsty. I'm
And
coming. You know what I'm
I'm coming.
saying? I'm coming. And I'm
I,
gonna try to drink it all. I'm gonna try to like take your cup. You know what I'm saying?
I
Like that.
call
It,
that I got a 5 gallon barrel of love and you got a shot glass to give me back.
right, right, and that's what it is. But for some people, it is deliberate, and for some people, they don't even know they're operating that way. They've been at such a deficit. They've been operating at such a deficit that they don't even realize it. This is just how they're trying to get by. I went through some things in my life and like I had some issues or whatever, especially around trauma and stuff, but I was never at a love deficit.
Mm,
So, so they were, I went through a lot of relationships, in just like in my dating, like, teens and early 20s. Cause I've been now I'm how old am I? Oh Lord, I'm 33.
okay.
I've been with my wife 10 years.
Okay.
So, from basically late teens to early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I had some dating or whatever, but then I had really like two serious relationships
Mm-hmm.
before my wife. Everything else was kind of like just young, like young
Yeah.
love, whatever, or just
Right.
dating or whatever, or just doing whatever. Just
Yeah.
loving around. We're gonna just call it
Right.
that. Okay.
Right. We ain't even gonna call it love. Right.
Just doing, doing a little, just fellowshipping.
Fellowship. Yeah.
um,
Situation
yeah,
shipping.
yeah, all kind of, oh, for sure, definitely
Yeah.
situationships. So, so yeah, prior to my wife, that was the pattern of like, I'm pouring and I'm pouring and I'm pouring. And so part of that was like not getting the reciprocity, but also feeling like if I didn't do that, I would not get love. Like basically feeling like I had to earn it, or feeling like I had to do that to get it romantically. And so, which was like, that was different from my actual experience, in terms of like family and platonic
Yeah.
and all that. But because I think partially too, because of trauma, I had some issues like navigating romantic situations and stuff like that, intimate situations and all that.
Yeah.
Because trauma changes your brain. And so my brain was a little out of whack in terms of like, certain dynamics, like certain things were like power dynamics and all that kind of stuff. Like I didn't quite know what to do with that. So that was the pattern I had been in. So prior to my wife, at like 19 to maybe 21, I dated a guy. Now I came out at a young age. I always knew that I like girls or whatever. I didn't not like guys. I was just kind of like, they all right. But I knew I
Right.
liked girls. Like it was kind of, for some people, they might be like, oh, I like guys. And they're kind of unsure, like, oh, maybe I might like her. It was the opposite for me. I never had a doubt about the girls. The guys are like, maybe he cute. I don't know. And to this day, I'm
Okay.
like, if he fine, he fine. You know what I'm saying? I'm not like a man hater or nothing like that. Like,
Right. Right.
me and my wife, we gonna look like, okay,
Okay.
so it's not like that. But I just wasn't sure. So I had dated like kind of all my first love experiences, first dating stuff were all with girls. And then college came around. I met this guy, was just feeling him. We just really vibed well. And I was just like, why not? Because I didn't, at that time, for me, loving without limits was like, I didn't really put like limitations on myself in terms of, I'm like, if I like you, I like you,
Right. It doesn't
and
matter if
I'll
you're
just
a
see.
girl or a guy. If I
Hmm.
like you, I
Yeah.
like you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just up to that point, it had primarily been girls. But then when I met him and I liked him, I didn't hesitate to like, I wasn't like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be gay, so I can't. I was just like, I like him. Like,
Right.
we
Right.
vibe. So I'm going to give it a shot. And we dated and I was all definitely in love and all that. But, I'm glad that I did it. Like, I mean, I feel like overall we had like a pretty good relationship, but, some stuff just didn't click. And, but it just showed me like, it helped me to kind of trust myself in terms of like, I didn't feel like I had to go by any set like label or anything like that. Like I knew what I leaned more toward. I'm like, okay, I know I like girls, or women at the time, once I got grown, women or whatever. But if I like somebody, I don't feel like I have to not express that. There's a lot of repression in the LGBT community where it's like, you got to choose, you need to stick right here. And like,
Yeah.
if you like this, and I'm just like, I feel like love can't really be boxed in like that. You like who you like. So if that means you're straight, that's fine. But if that means you're not, that's fine too. And sometimes it can change for people, and that's okay too. So I was like, I ain't gonna let nobody else's judgment like stop me from giving it a shot because I liked him. And I was like, he dope. So I'm gonna do it. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
stubborn. So I had my mom made up. I'm like, I ain't hear none of y'all say because I'm so like just head over heels over here. Um, so that all happened, and then we split up and everything. Some time passed, and then I got into another relationship, which also lasted a couple years. And that relationship ended up being toxic and abusive. So, just not a good situation. Um, but that really helped. That was what snapped me out of that pouring and pouring and pouring into other people and not getting the reciprocity and feeling like, I don't want to say I felt like I had to earn love. That's not right. But I felt like it was my role to be that person pouring into. I felt like that was what I was supposed to do because I'm feel like I'm surrounded by love. I'm filled by love. So I'm supposed to share it. And I'm supposed to pour into other people.
Yeah.
Like I really felt like even spiritually, like, well, I'm a vessel for that. That's what I'm supposed to do. That doesn't mean that you get taken advantage of. That doesn't mean that it's just a free for all. That doesn't mean people get to treat you any kind of way and you just keep pouring and pouring. But girl, no, I had to like have a moment with myself. And it
Have
took going through
boundaries.
that situation. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it took going through that situation to really um, snap me out of that and to make me reassess like my boundaries and everything, because that should not have gone on as long as it did. So I was single for a year, and I was in a place of being have my self-love journey, and was like, and it wasn't like I ever didn't like love myself, but reconnecting with myself and all that, and not being wrapped up in another person, and was perfectly fine to be by myself. And then here come this, my wife.
I
And
was
here
getting
she
ready to
comes.
say, before you get into the story with your wife, you took us from your childhood where you were filled with love without limits from various
Hmm.
members of your family. And then you had some early young adult experiences where you were feeling the guy, you had a pretty good relationship, and then that ended, and then you ended up dating someone else and it became
Hmm.
abusive and toxic. And
Hmm.
then you reconnected with yourself, right? And for that year, you were on that self love journey. In 3 words, how would you describe your journey with love without limits prior to meeting your boo thing?
Hmm. I would say expansive, um, evolving, and illuminating.
Mm,
I
those are good
learned a lot.
words.
I learned a lot. And by the time, and I learned a lot to where I got to a place where I was at a place of peace that was kind of new to me. Like it was like my first time feeling that type of peace as an adult, where I was good. I'm like, I'm okay. I never was someone who was like, "Ooh, I just can't be alone." It wasn't like that, but it's different to do something deliberately. For me to deliberately say, "I just got out of this situation," I refuse. Like, I ain't dealing with nobody. I just want to be by myself. I'm not jumping into anything else. And to give myself at least a year, said I was going to take at least a year to just be by myself. So it was at the time, by the time she came along, like I was so comfortable with myself. Like I was just like, I'm like,
I'm good.
I don't have to be with you. Like I don't have to do nobody. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm not lonely. I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. There's this song, and it always plays in my head. It's an India Ari song called Private Party. And she says, sometimes I'm alone, but never lonely. That's what I've come to realize. That was like my little mantra. I'm like, India girl, yes, you singing my life. Like, because in the song, she's basically saying, I'm having a private party. It's just me, myself, and I type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm good. Like, look at my growth. Look at and I love her anyway. But the message of that song was like my soundtrack.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. I'm like, I'm good. And it was such a beautiful feeling to feel like that. And then this person comes along
And she comes
when
along. Here she comes now.
I'm not looking. And we kind of like knew of each other before we met because we had a mutual friend. But we had not met. So we knew several of the same people, but we had not met. Um, by her telling, she says that she loved me before she met me. She's like, I knew I wanted you to be my wife before I met you, based on what other people had to say about you. And I'm like, hey, that's deep. Like, what were they saying? I want to know. So she was just like, yeah, I already knew. Like, I knew or whatever. And I was just like, well, I didn't know you. So I just knew when we met, I thought she was cool. She was an interesting person. I wasn't checking for anybody. I was like, I'm feeling so lovely. Like,
Can I
just doing
just
my own
stop you for
thing.
one moment? I got chills when you said that. I got chills because, and I don't even know why. I know this is divine conversation because when I was trying to come up with the title of what this topic was going to be about, I was teeter-tottering between a couple of topics, and I was just like love without expectation, I wanted it to be provocative but also be in tune to what our conversation was going to be about. And everything that you've been saying from the beginning of this live to this very moment has been a description of love without limits. Because how can someone love you before they even know you?
That's what I said. I was like, how? What they do that at? What girl? Tell me. I really, it blew my mind because I'm just like, and this is the thing too with love, like it blew my mind and it caught me off guard because I was like, really? But it also made me think about, okay, I'm surrounded by love and I have like a loving village and all kind of stuff. Yeah. And I always have had that. And so I'm like, these people once really loved me. Like you're saying based off what you have heard before meeting me, based on what other people have told you about me and about their interaction with me. You're like, oh yeah, she's the one. I'm just like, what? So that has to be, you had to have been told loving things when I'm not around, not in my presence. So to me, I'm like, that was a testament to me of me pouring love into other people and, us having that reciprocity because I'm like, I must be doing something right if that's how you feel. And all I'm doing is just being myself and loving these folks who are in my life and, people who've been in my life for a long time. Just like, that's all I'm doing. Like pouring into them, loving them. And one of the things too, for me is like, I always had that reciprocity, like in some like friendships and like family, it was the romantic that was a little bit of the struggle for me. Yeah. But I still, was able to have a full cup. So I wasn't like operating from a deficit. I just had to figure out the romantic part and figure out how my trauma impacted it. Right. So, because that was a big piece of it. And honestly, it took me a while into this relationship to fully realize the impact of like dealing with trauma and going through that and how it impacted how I showed up in this relationship. So with her, we met, we were cool. And then we like ran into each other or something. And at the time I was dating someone else. I had finally started back dating. And I told her, I was like, I'm dating somebody, like we can hang out, but I'm like, what I'm not going to do is be, giving it up. Like, I'm not going to be sexually involved with both of y'all. Yeah. Maybe in a past life, but I'm not in that place anymore in my life. Okay. Yeah. Those days are over. I'm not trying to do that. And I just told her straight up, like, I've been dating this person. We are involved in that way. And it was like fairly recent, but I'm like, we have recently, added that to the mix. So that's not going to be happening over here. So like, if it's that kind of party, if you're like, because sometimes people be like that, if you're trying to just come at me like that, don't even waste your time because it's not going to be fruitful. Right. Like you just going to waste your time. But what I will say is that she courted me. I had never been courted, like for real until my wife. And so and I thought that I knew a lot about love and even like my friends and stuff, they're like, they used to call me a hippie and they're like, she's just the love, whatever, like all about love, whatever. But she showed me something. She taught me something because her little mantra was like, love, what is it? Like love as if she had never been hurt. And so mind you, we're early 20s. And so she, had like some significant relationships just like I had. But she said, she kind of embarked on our interaction. Like, I'm going to go into this as if I've never been hurt and just like be open, be vulnerable. And me, I was in a place of, I'm good by myself. So I wasn't in a vulnerable place like that. Like, I'm a fairly open person, but I'm also private. So we were in different places with our vulnerability. I didn't realize it. She realized it because she could feel it. Because she's like, I'm wide open and you're kind of like more guarded. Mm-hmm. Right. So I ended up, and this was a pattern that kind of persisted throughout the first few years of us being together. So like we dated, she courted me, and we definitely had like reciprocity and stuff like that, but I just was not used to being courted. Like, and so much effort in like
courted, like what is your definition of courted? Because courted I'm 49. So I'm a lot older than you. So I want to know what your version of courted is. Because everybody's generation is a little bit different.
So what I mean by courted is being very deliberate and intentional about the time we spent together, about planning out things for us to do, and about tailoring those things specifically to like my interests, setting aside time, not being distracted, not doing that with anybody else, and being consistent with it. Like
Being intentional.
being intentional and consistent.
Mm.
Like, hey, I know you like this thing. Like, I may not be familiar with this, but I know you like it. So I'm going to plan a whole day. Like, we went to a festival, so she planned a whole date around this festival, something she had no interest in. But she knew it
Wow.
was an interest of mine. And she was happy to see me taking it all in and being happy. So she was like, I had a really good time. She was like, I didn't expect to enjoy it like that, but seeing my enjoyment and me like, teaching her about the stuff or whatever, she enjoyed it. But she put the time and effort in. I didn't even know anything that this was happening, and she planned, something around it. So stuff like that, being very deliberate, very intentional about our time, not just being like, hey, you want to chill? That's cool or
Yeah.
whatever, but she was on a mission. She was on a mission. So she wasn't, I was like, hey, we don't have to do all that all the time, but she was like, yeah, so I'm trying to wine and dine you, okay?
I have a question that goes back to you saying that her mantra about loving without what was the saying that she
Loving as if she had never been hurt.
never been hurt. I think a lot of times people have boundaries. So or because they've been hurt in love
Mm-hmm.
or they've had some type of heartbreak, they always go into a new situation very, very guarded, like, I don't want to get hurt. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm only going to show you this much of me, or I'm only going to
And
give
that
you
was
this
me.
much of me.
That was me. That was me with her. I mean, and it was not intentional. Like I didn't intentionally go into it guarded.
You didn't even know that
And
you were doing it, right?
I didn't know, and I didn't realize how much that abusive relationship, because it was abusive, um, that abusive relationship had impacted me. And so I went from that to being by myself. So I hadn't had to be vulnerable in that way in over a year by the time
Yeah.
she, came along. And so I was guarded and did not, and I mean, she would point it out and I'm like, what you
I was
talking
going
about? Like
to ask you that. Did she point it out to you that
oh,
you were
absolutely.
guarded?
She absolutely did. And I think because it made her feel away. It hurt her feelings because she was not guarded. Like, it wasn't like she was just like, ooh, just let do whatever. But she was very open and very, like, she, came into it, like she said, like she had never been hurt. And I did not realize I was guarded. And it took me a while to even figure out how that was showing up. She saw it. I did not see it. I really was like, I thought I was being, I did not know.
Right.
So that really, it put her in a place where she felt like she was more into me than I was into her.
Mm.
Which wasn't the case. I was very protective of, like, I had like reconnected to myself, and me being guarded was like, I was fiercely protective of that. Like, I will not lose myself in another person. That was my thing. So it wasn't even personal about her. Like, I'm not going
Her.
to show you. It was like, I have to hold on to myself. I ain't losing myself in nobody, because I lost myself in that previous relationship. And some things I never got back. Honestly,
Yeah.
I never did. So I
Yeah.
was like, well, no, clank, clank. Like,
Yeah.
I'm holding on tight to
So
Jhavia.
it
And
didn't have anything to do with her. It had everything to do
right,
with you not
that was the
losing
place I was
yourself.
in, period. Like, that was the place I
Yeah.
was in across the
Yeah.
board with whoever. I'm like, oh, this cool or whatever, but I'm going to hold on to myself. And the ways that manifested, or the ways that presented, hurt her feelings, because she's like, well, I don't feel like we're not at the same level of vulnerability.
Mm. And with you not being at the same level of vulnerability, how much patience did she have to have with you to get to that place of vulnerability? How long did that
Here,
take?
you know what's so funny to me? So here's the thing, because she had a lot of patience, right? And I feel like, I'm someone who has had a lot of patience with people. And in some other ways, I had to have a lot of patience with her. But though I'm there, a lot of patience.
Mm-hmm.
She has had a lot throughout our entire relationship. I mean, we've been together over 10 years, and we've been married coming up on 4. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. But throughout this whole thing, yeah, she's had a lot of a lot of patience, and and because of that too, like, I'm mindful of that, and I try to give her a lot of grace. Like, she's the patient person, I'm the grace person. And so they're, very similar, but a little different. She definitely, patience is something I've consistently had to work on. I'm very much like, hey, when I'm ready to do something, I'm getting it done. And actually the abusive ex was actually the one who pointed, this is one thing she was right about. She's like, you want stuff on your time. And I'm like, and I argue her down, but she was correct. She was
Right.
actually right about that. So Courtney, my wife, has definitely showed me a lot of patience, and then I've shown her grace, in terms of like her, just like as she's navigates through certain things, and like, I'm just like, it's okay, like, because some stuff we go through at different times. Like some stuff she went through and I had already been through it. I'm like a year older than her, but
Mm-hmm.
just different life experiences. My life experience have been, she says I've lived a bunch of lives.
You lived a bunch of lives. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had different life experience. So like some stuff, like I saw like within the past couple of years she went through, and I had already gone through it. So I'm like, and she's like, this is just like driving me crazy. I'm like, it's okay. Like, you're going to get through it. So we've had to, be, be patient with each other.
I think that's awesome. I want to take a turn for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're a wellness coach, because you have experienced love without limits from your childhood all the way to you being married, to your wife. There's a lot of conversations and misunderstanding, people that have been misguided about the LGBTQ community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just read something the other day about the governor of Texas wanting protective services and social workers
Yeah.
to get involved with trans kids and
Mm.
to
Yeah.
prosecute
Saying like basically they need to go to the parent. Yeah. Like
like they're
penalize the
prosecuting their
parents if their kids
parents
are
and
trans.
guardians. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's something very similar that's going on in Florida. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
literally singling out people in the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm.
As
Yeah.
a
And they're saying they
wellness,
don't want to do that education anymore. Like they don't want to, you can't say the word gay. You can't. Yeah. They're being real. It's, for one, a lot of times people, like fear what they don't know. Um, but I think the other part of it is like people have this thought process like some things are new. Like being trans is not new. Being like gay or bi, whatever, like these are not new things. These are not like modern day like identities or whatever. Like these are things that have existed for a long time. So and also we're so used to kind of like certain things being compulsory, like this is how you are supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to act. This is how that anything that goes outside of that is, it seems like a threat because it is going against what the box you're supposed to fit into. And that's even for, let's say for like a straight couple and you have like a stay at home dad and the mom goes out and works, or you
yeah,
have the dad likes to cook and the mom, there's a couple I follow. They are so funny to me, but the guy, the husband, this man cooks his behind off. Okay. He does all the cooking. She does like the cleaning, the laundry and stuff like that. But their comments, folks will be like, dang, he just do all, does she ever cook? Blah, blah, blah. I couldn't be, what kind of woman? And I'm just like, let these folk live their life. Like he loves to
it's
cook. He is great at
it's
it.
breaking the societal norms
And people, that threatens people. That brings up fear for people because they're like, oh no, this is an unknown thing. This is going to threaten. It's like, I wish that people understood, like somebody living their life is not a threat to you. Like people get scared because they're like, oh, if you do it, then it's a possibility. Like there's this Janet Mock wrote this book and she talks about possibility models. I always bring it up because I love the concept, but they're like, oh, you're going to be a possibility model for my child. They're going to be like, oh, they see you and that means they can be gay. And I'm like, well, they see you and you straight. So like, it doesn't matter. They're going to be who they're going to be. Like I knew that I liked girls at 5 years old. Like I remember having a little crush on in kindergarten. Okay.
yeah.
So you're going to be who you're going to be. That doesn't make you, that doesn't mean it should be like a fear thing. And now I think too, because people they're tired of having to tiptoe around their identities, and they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to feel like, ooh, I gotta like hide and be careful. And so now that people are seeing it more, there's more fear, and they're like, they're trying to take over and blah, blah. And I'm like, these folks have always existed. They're just not existing in the shadows anymore.
So
they're not trying to do that.
Right. So with you being a coach in that arena of what's going on, how do you navigate your work in that community, knowing that they're marginalized people as well? How do you navigate your work? And I know you're probably very passionate about it, but how do you balance your work, and how do you deal with trying to educate folk that are not embracing of the LGBTQ community? Because I mean, I just had a conversation last week where I had a guy literally imploded on the phone because he was just like, I'm not getting ready to, I don't like and I don't respect the LGBT community. And I was just like, okay, my question was, because I interviewed, my mind is turning. I said, so tell me again how their life is affecting your life.
Right.
And he could not give me a tangible, attainable answer. And
first of all, it's like, how dare you ask a logical question? That's what I'm like, how does this impact you?
Yeah. How is this affecting your life at all? You know? And he literally imploded on the phone to the point where he hung the phone up on me. And I was like,
because he was upset that he really could not answer your question. You asked a logical question and he did not have an answer because it's an illogical thing. Like, he just feel how you feel. And sometimes, and the other thing too is sometimes people are just regurgitating what they know. Like, you never, like, you asking that question for him might be the first time that he actually had to like pause and be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, somebody's actually challenging me. I might have learned this and never challenged it. We have so many folks who, they're like, oh, well, this is what my mama believe, and this is what this person believe, and this is what that person believe, and they never challenge it. They just keep on going on, and they never question it. But then when they're presented with a challenge or a question like you asking that, he's like, now I'm gonna act a fool because I really don't have an answer. And so for like me with like counseling and coaching and stuff, to be honest, I used to be someone who would kind of like educate folks, and it would be like around issues of like queer issues and race issues, like because I mean, I'm a Black queer woman, I'm passionate about those things, and I would, try to jump in and teach folks. Let's see, I'm 33. I don't know. I stopped that. I feel like I stopped that before 30, but if not, definitely no later than 30. Because I was tired.
Yeah.
I had been doing that my whole life, and I was just like, I don't want to do that no more. I want to actually live my life.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm an educator, but it's like we also get to choose what we want to teach and like how we want to spend our time and our capacity. Like, for instance, you had that interaction with that guy. You asked him a question. He didn't have no answer for you. You know what I'm saying? So he going through his stuff, but at the end of the day, that was done. Like, you can't change his mind. You can't do anything. Right. And so we have to keep it pushing. So I'm in a place now too, where part of my work is with Black folks and with queer folks. I'm like, listen, tell them white folks get out your face. Tell them like the straight folks get out your face. Like, if it's an issue like that, you got to live your life.
Yeah.
If you want to educate, that's fine. And there are people who do that. And I feel like they also should be compensated for those things. Like, if they're going to educate you, run them their coins. Okay. But yes, people feel like they're entitled to free education. Like, people think that, white folks think that Black folks should just educate them. Like, they just entitled to our labor. And then a lot of times straight folks think they're entitled to our labor. Like, how does that, women, how does that work? Oh, none of your business. Get out my face. Like, I don't have to. I don't have to do that labor for you. Right. And it's like they don't ask everybody that. Like, white folks don't ask other white people like, oh yeah, so I heard your family's from Germany. What about that Holocaust? Like, they don't do that. Yeah. They come to us and they're like, educate me. And it's like, y'all feel entitled to our label. That's not appropriate with anybody else, but it's appropriate with us. It's the same thing. Particularly, I've more so had this experience with men, honestly, of asking all kind of invasive questions. I'm like, you don't go to your homeboy or to whoever and ask what him and his person does. Like, but you feel entitled to know my bedroom logistics. Like, that's not your business. Like,
Right.
So I think that there has to be a balance of like protecting your peace as a marginalized person. So whether it's like as a Black person, as a Black woman, as a queer person, because those identities in particular, because they, I have those intersections, I'm very protective of those. Like, I'd be like, look, get out Black women face. Like, get out
Right.
Black women face, get out Black folks face, get out Black trans people, like all that kind of stuff. Like, just leave us alone. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you don't want to do that labor, you're not obligated. And I think too, that's shifting. I think people used to feel obligated to do that labor because we felt like we had to almost rally for our humanity. Like, I need you to see me as a person, but I'm a person. Whether you see me as that or not, whether you see me as less than or not, I'm still a person. Like, whether it's because I'm Black or I'm a woman or I'm queer, whatever, like, I'm still a person. Even if you think otherwise, and I don't have to defend that. I used to feel like I had to, and I felt like part of that education when we do that, if it's some white lady like, oh, can I touch your hair? Or if it's some guy like, oh, how do two women do this? And y'all don't want to know, you just ain't found the right man, whatever. Any of those situations, I used to feel like, oh, I gotta be the person to like, educate. Cause ultimately that was like defending my humanity. And I'm just not there anymore. I'm not in that place anymore. I'm not going to do it. My humanity is not up for debate. No, you can't touch my hair.
Right.
No, you cannot, know what goes on in my bedroom. Like, no, I'm not educating you unless you run me some coins. Like, it's only certain people I'm willing to educate for free.
Right.
Like, it's people, I have a priority list. Okay. And I'm not going to do that. So yeah, so I stopped doing that. And I encourage other folks, like I encourage Black women, like, y'all ain't got to educate these white folks, especially Black women, because they always come to us. And if you're going to do it, I'm like, run. They need to run your money. Like, we need to be compensated for all this labor that we do. So that's how it shifted for me. In the past, I used to feel like I had to defend it and I had to educate and all this kind of stuff. And now I just don't deal with it. Like, if that's the energy you come to me with, I'm shutting it down. Like, my boundary game is real strong.
Yeah.
And I'll shut it down real quick. I'm like, no, I'm not dealing with it. Like, I don't have to tell you that. I recently dealt with can I touch your hair, like, types of, like, recently. And I'm just like, girl, you get on my face? Like, no.
Yeah.
So we don't have to labor. Like, we ain't got to do that. We're not like, we don't have to be the world's teachers. And because I think we need to reclaim some of our time and our energy and our capacity to just live our lives and to like do stuff that we enjoy. And I think that's a part, like, I love the name Heal Black Joy because I feel like that's part of it. Part of us doing that is like taking our stuff back, like taking our energy. We ain't gotta teach. Look, Google is free and Google got a lot of stuff. And you can Google some educators who you can pay to educate you on this stuff. Like, we ain't got to do that.
Right. This has been such a good conversation. I love your story about your family. I love your story about your wife. And I love your personal story about how you were able to love without limits throughout your life. So I am getting ready to start asking my guests this. When we talk about Heal Black Joy, I know what Heal Black Joy means to me. You mentioned it. What does Heal Black Joy mean to you in your life?
So for me, because part of it is like what I said about reclaiming our time and our energy and our capacity and putting it back into ourselves. And then for me, like, doing that on a very personal level, like in my life, I'm prioritizing myself in a way that I hadn't in the past. Having that boundary game, be strong. But also like being deliberate and intentional about doing things that bring us joy. Because I think that the concept of healing Black joy specifically, like, it's not just, called just Black joy, it's healing it, is because it has been injured, it has been hurt, by life, by oppression, by white supremacy, by racism, by all these things. And so to heal it, I think is, for us to like take back some stuff. Like, we can live our lives. We don't have to be like social justice, like warriors all the time. We don't have to be laboring all the time. We can just kind of like enjoy our lives and exist and do things that we want to do and rest and all that. So I think Healing Black Joy really is a reclamation, like us reclaiming our time and our energy and pouring it back into ourselves in the way that we want to. Like, not like, oh, I feel like I have to do this because of what I'm supposed to do. It's like, just do something that, like I always say, selfish is not a dirty word. Like something selfish, like something that is like, this is for me.
Yeah.
Because we do so much stuff that's for other people, like something for you. And then the more that you do that, you're going to heal. And then when we have that collective healing, like we see how that kind of like reverberates throughout like our communities.
Yeah.
If we're all doing that work, like I see the difference that it makes, whether it's in a family, a friend group, organization, whatever. It makes a big difference because then we can all start to reframe kind of like what our lives look like. We don't have to be in survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
We don't have to be, operating from a scarcity mindset. Like we really can just enjoy our life. Like we don't have to be feeling like we have to always be working and working. Like I just want to go sit out in the sun. Go do that.
Yeah.
Like go swim if you want to go swimming. Take that day off work. Take the mental health days. Look, who on this? Take the mental health days. Take your time. Take your time off. Look, don't let them folks run you to the ground. I know folks got to work their job, but we have time. Use your time. I've been using using sick days, using vacation days, stuff like that to pour into yourself. And it has positive benefits across the board because when you do that, if you got kids, your kids gonna see it. Your kids gonna see that, oh, well, like mommy likes to get her nails done. She goes and does that. And like, this makes her happy. Mommy likes to go swimming. Like, it's going to have that positive impact on those future generations to see us actually healing ourselves and caring for ourselves instead of just laboring for other people.
Absolutely. My final question, because we're at that hour mark, my final question to you, I know you said you were on a journey of being a foster parent. How do you love without limits while fostering the children that you have?
I feel like fostering at this phase in my life, fostering is my greatest example of loving without limits. I feel like I've had examples of that. So like I talked about like my childhood, and then it was, figuring out relationships, and then it was like my wife and navigating our relationship. And now, because we started fostering last year. So now parenting and foster parenting specifically, because we don't have any biological children. And we, made the deliberate choice, to foster and everything. Listen, it is definitely, because you're having to navigate in a system that is deeply flawed. But these kids, like, it's not the kids that are deeply flawed. You know what I mean? So it's like having to balance that. It's a very weird balancing act. Honestly, it's like we're having to deal with all the stuff that comes with that, but also be very present for these kids and pour into them. I'm fostering a 1-year-old who we've had since he was 5 months. And then a 5-year-old who just recently got placed with us a week ago. So trying to show them like, hey, we're going to pour into you. We're going to affirm you. We're going to support you. And also dealing with all the stuff on the back end. It's a lot. It's very trying. It has definitely, I'm very grateful I'm in therapy weekly. It's a big reason, honestly, because there is a lot of grief. A lot of grief and a lot of empathy and stuff for these kids. They just deserve better. Like, it's just messed up. You know what I mean? Like, no kid deserves to be in this situation. So it really is, it's teaching that concept. There's this thing like in conscious parenting or whatever, just like us not looking at kids as like belonging to us and that type of thing. Like being able to understand, like, you have to care for this child and all kind of stuff, but like they are their own person. And I think that because literally these are not our children in that way, like it reinforces that. So it's like really forces me to like look at like loving them and forming an attachment, because psychologically that is necessary, but not holding on so tight that I can't let go.
Right.
Which I think is important, period, in parenting, but like it's reinforced now because of how the system is set up. Like something could happen and something could change. So like I really have to like be on top of that. So it's not easy. I mean, I adore them and I don't regret it. Like I think these are some beautiful kids and like I think I'm doing what I should be doing. it's one of the hardest things I've done in my life.
I
It really is.
applaud you on that journey. I think that it is, like you said, being a parent, regardless if they're your biological kids, your adoptive kids, or even your foster kids, having that experience of having to pour into someone that you can impact and make maybe change the trajectory of their life based off of how
Hmm.
you treat them and what you pour into them
Hmm.
is one of the most
Yeah.
love without limits examples that I
Because
can.
we said that earlier, like how childhood, that stuff from your childhood sticks with
It
you.
sticks
And
with
also children are great teachers. Like children gonna learn you something.
you.
It's like old
Yes,
folks say, like they
yes,
gonna learn like these. I've learned a lot, and from especially the baby, we've had the baby longer, so more so like with him, I've learned so much, and even getting to see myself as a mother, like I was like, I didn't know what that would look like. And then with the 5-year-old, whole other ball game because I've never had a 5-year-old, and she
right,
turned and she be all over the place. So I'm like, oh Lord, okay, I got to keep up with this.
yeah,
So they definitely teach you a lot about yourself, and they also point out stuff that you need to work on.
yeah.
um, they definitely will, hold up a mirror. They'll reflect back to you some things that you got to work on so that you can be better for them. Um, yeah,
That's
it's
amazing. That's
it's quite a
amazing.
journey for sure.
I am so happy that I've had this conversation with you. We had an electrifying conversation before with our sister, Naya being a
Yeah, those good
she's a
times for
foster.
sure.
Yeah, it was good times. We have to do this again, girl. I love talking to you. I
I'm
think
like,
you
I hope I actually talked about the top because I'm like,
no, you
I feel like I
did.
was a little all over the place, but
It's so
yeah,
crazy. You answered
I
my
do love
questions
love.
without
I love me some love.
you answered my questions without me even asking you the questions. That's how divine it was.
Mm,
That's
I'm glad. I'm
exactly how
glad.
divine it was. Like you answered
I'm
some of the
glad.
questions that I was going to ask you, and I didn't even get a chance to ask you the questions. So
Mm.
it was
Well, I'm
divine.
glad, and I love. I mean, I love. He'll like. I mean, come on, the name first of all. I just love it. I'm like, because I think Black joy is such a beautiful thing, and it does need to be healed. It does need to be um, just reclaimed, So I think that it's important, and love. I always say like love is my favorite subject. I love love. I'm very much a lover.
Right.
So I'm grateful, and I'm glad that that you asked me to participate. Very, very grateful.
Well, I thank you. I thank you again for not only just sharing your story with us, sharing your love without limits story about your family. I'm pumped. Your mom has inspired me to be able to, even though my daughter is older and I didn't do everything right as a child, but as we're ever evolving, I always want to be able to pour from a place of her being and not her doing.
Hmm.
And
And it's
so,
never too late.
and
It's
it's
never
never
too
too
late.
late.
Like we still pouring into each other. My mom just she visited not too long ago. And I always, I be needing mama. Okay. So
Absolutely.
it's never too late
We need our
to pour
mamas for
into.
sure.
Hmm.
For sure.
Hmm.
But I just want to thank you again for coming in and sharing with us your journey on love without limits and how you navigate that, how you navigated as a child, but more importantly, how you're navigating it now in your marriage as well as being a foster parent. So I really appreciate you for doing that. What are you working on? I know we only got like a couple of minutes, so tell us really quickly what you're working on, or how we can follow you, what you're doing. um
Um, right now, I mean, I can be followed at Jhavia Nicole. It's just my name. I have a podcast, but I'm kind of like combining everything to just be under Jhavia Nicole. So
yeah,
my podcast is Black Radical Queer Podcast. But I'll be, any updates and stuff will be on Jhavia Nicole. That's it for the most part. I mean, for this month, I'm going to actually have this function as my podcast episode. So I'll,
yeah,
put it out. But I'll have some other stuff coming up. So I talk a lot about like mental health and wellness and all that. And also like kind of how to incorporate little radical things into your life. Because it doesn't mean you got to be out in the streets and protesting all that, but you can still be radical. I mean, Heal Black Joy is a radical thing because they don't want us to have joy. So that in and of itself is radical. So that's really mainly, and honestly, just trying to parent these babies. Like I've been in that little bubble, little foster care bubble. So I'm
okay,
not really working on anything else right now, but yeah, besides the podcast.
okay. Well, we'll definitely I'll definitely put everything up for you And send me anything about your podcast. I'll definitely put it up on the Heal Black Joy platform.
Okay.
I want to thank you again. Thank my Heal Black Joy tribe for tuning in tonight. Those of you that are not present right now, but will be able to catch this tomorrow. It debuts at 8 o'clock on our YouTube channel, our Heal Black Joy YouTube channel. And I'm going to find some quotables for tonight so that we can put them up for the rest of the week and put it on TikTok and put it on Facebook and put it on YouTube as well as
Instagram. That's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be
and
really
I'll definitely share the YouTube stuff, and then it'll automatically, once I share it should automatically actually go out to my the podcast listeners too, the audio.
Okay. Awesome.
So then everybody can be able to check it out, and then I can refer them back to your Instagram.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, lady. Thank you again. Thank you, Heal Black Joy Tribe, for tuning in tonight. This was a wonderful conversation about love without limits. If you didn't check it out, if you just came in late, go back and watch it. Go back and watch it, because she gave us some nuggets as a parent. She gave us nuggets as a Black woman. She gave us nuggets as anybody that's navigating this life as a Black person. You definitely want to watch this episode. So thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye, y'all.
Y'all have a good one. Bye.